Përshëndetje.
Good evening, everybody. We'll start with the findings for this third press conference regarding the reports we have received until 6 o'clock. We'll avail ourselves of the situation that we are now live on Facebook as well and call on all citizens to vote massively. The trend of participation is increased regarding the comparison with the previous elections, and of course the trend should be increasing. An improved quality democracy, of course, requires massive participation of the citizens in voting. So we like to call on citizens to use the remaining 40 minutes to express their will and to legitimate as much as possible tomorrow's government. Regarding the data and the information on the incidents reported a while ago or new incidents, there are reports that in Center 270/1 in the commission number 4, the security cameras have threatened the privacy of the voters, and the secret room was moved because the cameras were right above the secret or the voting booth, which of course raises question marks regarding the quality. In Malich, as the media has reported and our observers noted, in 3870 polling station, there was a conflict between the Democratic Party observer with a couple of citizens. The process has been interrupted for some time, the voting process, and then until the situation was resolved with intervention of the commissioners. In Fosharas, as we reported before, regarding the physical altercation between the commissioners in Center 438, in polling station 438 in Rap Kazaz Steven. As we noted in the previous press conference, the situation continues to regarding this incident, and now the situation continues to be tense. There are groups of followers from both main political parties, and it is necessary for political parties. So the main political parties need to intervene to decompress the situation. In administrative center in recent unit IML, there's been an incident regarding the Ora News journalists regarding a case of family voting. Voting has been done in the precinct regarding this issue, and the process is currently continuing normally. In the meantime, based on the system data regarding the progress of the process in the 360 polling stations, so we can say that until 6 o'clock p.m., regarding the persons, unauthorized persons in the voting stations, in the polling stations, we report 7%, and the majority of them were party affiliates. While as regards the placement of the polling booth in order to guarantee the confidentiality of the vote, and of course for the booth to be visible by all commission members and also observers, in 7% of the cases the polling the ballot booth does not meet these requirements, and in some 100% of the cases this the confidentiality of the ballot is secured and assured. As regards the placement in a position where all the commissioners and observers can see it, in 2.85% this polling booth, this ballot booth was not in the right place. 7% of the cases did not have posters placed in the relevant positions, and whether there were posters regarding the number of candidates in 7% of the polling stations. There were no such posters. Is there a list of voters posted? In this case, again, 7% of the polling stations did not post the voter lists in visible places. As regards the adaptation and facilitation of access to voting for disabled persons and disabled voters, in 12% of the cases, this access is not provided at all, while it is partially provided in 35% of the polling stations. Were there cases of voters that they were allowed to vote without an ID document? It's 0.9. So in 100% of cases, they were not allowed to vote without an ID. As regards voting without being marked with the relevant ink, in 2% of the cases, people were not marked were allowed to vote without the marking with the ink. As regards presentation of voters and voting based on a decision of court decision, because the voters were not in the list, in 5% of the voting, I'm sorry, in 4% of the voting polling stations, there has been voting with court decisions. As regards the presence of voters with cell phones in the polling station, in 7% of the polling stations, there have been voters who have had their cell phones while voting. And regarding the case of actual voting while holding the cell phone, there is a report on 4% incidence of this. Regarding voters with physical disabilities, which have been accompanied by citizens to vote and to help, the filling out of the declaration to us to help these citizens. In 9% of the polling stations, this statement, this declaration to help them has not been filled out. When more than one person has, I'm sorry, when one person has helped more than one voter with disabilities to help, there is a report of this happening in 2% of the polling station. And again, in 2% of polling stations, there is a reporting that a member of the commission was actually the one helping the disabled voter to cast their ballots. In cases when a person votes, I'm sorry, more than once, casts a ballot more than once, no such cases have been reported. And as regards cases of one person casting ballots for other people that are not present, again, there are no cases reported regarding this. Regarding the question of whether the voters have voted, taken a photo of their ballot, in 3% of the polling stations, there are such referrals for taking pictures. Regarding the question whether you have noted a person that has intervened in the work of the committee during the process, in 3% of the there have been people who have intervened in the work of the commissioners. While unauthorized persons leading the work of the commission, in this case, there are no reports that such a thing has happened. In 2% of the polling station, there is reporting that individuals have requested or have wanted to do campaigning or to influence people inside the polling station. While surrounding the polling station, this figure jumps to 6%. And these people, of course, talked about the two main parties, and they have, of course, tried to do propaganda outside the polling stations. There is no cases reported regarding people that have used pressure against the voters in the polling station, while outdoors of the polling station, in 2% of these polling stations, there have been cases of persons pressuring citizens before they vote. As regards propaganda material around polling station, in 4% of polling stations, there has been propaganda material around these polling stations. While as regards the novelty and on the new thing of this election, so when the gatherings of unauthorized persons around polling station is not allowed, in 31% of the polling stations, individuals and groups of individuals and who remained within this space and the confines of this space defined by law. These were the main findings used with the statistical methodology for the 306 polling stations throughout the country. What we need to note, as it is also shown in this questionnaire regarding the identification, electronic identification, some 20% of the centers have had problems at least once with the ID equipment, even though in some of the polling stations the identification is being done manually. As regards the final findings, so up until so we'll have a press conference at 11, where we'll talk about the entirety of the findings, and also we'll talk about the process for the delivery of the voting materials to the election administration zones and the start of the counting, if there will be any counting places that will have started the process by that time. It is very important that at the end of this press conference, we call again on all citizens to participate massively in these elections in the last 30 minutes left, while political parties need to ensure that all followers and all branches in the districts to ensure a safe and quiet situation in and around the polling stations, and then the counting places, so that they allow a calm process for the delivery of voting materials and not to impact in any delays of the process, and to create a quiet climate. As we have noted before, we recognize and we commend the political leadership for the messages and the positive messages of calm. We call on them to make these messages public and also directly to their party structures throughout the country, in order for this climate to continue even at the end of the voting process and then the start of the counting process. Of course, we'd like to call on the citizens, of course, to trust the good work of the entire election administration, starting with the CEC and the entire election administration structures throughout the second level and the third level of election administration. Thank you very much for the attention. If you have any questions, we are open. If there are no other questions, then the next conference is at 11 p.m.